I then formally welcome all of you to back to this session in World Wind Energy Conference 2021. And this session focuses on international energy, initiatives, which is an important aspect of the, creation of the energy transition ecosystem and policies and global perceptions and things like that. So I was thinking, what exactly are these energy initiatives and which are these energy initiatives and what do they achieve? So I have a very quick two slides that I will show you. So if we look at, just a minute. Right. So if you look at international organizations, which is what the initiatives are, on the environmental front, we have UNFCCC, IPCC, COP. We have IRENA, which in fact we had we had been very much involved in the formation of IRENA, the WWE, World Wind Energy Association. Then we have ISA, which is the International Solar Alliance, which is initiated by India. Then we have REN Alliance. Mr. Peter Ray is here from REN Alliance. We have other organizations which are associations or societies like International Solar Energy Society. There is Indian International Hydro Association, WWEA. There is an organization called ICIMOD, which is the International Center for Integrated Mountain Development. And this is again, a multilateral kind of a body looking at mainly at the mountain regions, which are important ecosystems. And then we have the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals from UN and other bodies. We have Global Energy Commission to end energy poverty. This is some kind of a commission which looks at energy poverty, so basically about energy access. Then we have RE100 as a group looking at 100% renewable energy. We have Sustainable Energy for All as an initiative. We have another some initiative of Clean Energy Ministerial. We have EIA. We have Natural Resources Defense Council. It's called the NRDC. We have in Asia, we have ASEAN. We have APCCT, Asian Pacific Center for Transfer of Technology. We have SARI's South Asian Regional Initiative, which was initially started with USAID, and then SAREP, which was also USAID initiative, then Association of Southeast Asia, the ASEAN, which I mentioned already there, and the SARC. So SARC is the South Asian Association of Regional Countries, and it also has an energy center. So there's a SARC Energy Center. And in all these organizations, energy and renewable energy and sustainable energy and environment, all this comes into play. And very briefly, I did some loud thinking on what are the possible objectives or what do these organizations achieve or why do these organizations exist. So one of the important things that they do is, collect and analyze data from a global perspective. And we can see that this climate change initiative entirely is born out of that. And then they also do, out of this analysis, the information dissemination. Then they influence policies. They influence global energy and environment policies, national policies, the corporate policies like 100% RE, and financial sector policy towards environment and renewable energy. So they sort of act as a catalyst towards the energy transition process. They work on regional and cross-border cooperation. They sort of catalyze or facilitate these dialogues between nations or stakeholders. They also end up doing some resource mobilization, formulate energy projects. These energy projects can be, for example, very large renewable energy projects. They can be transmission systems, or these can be one of the projects that have been innovative projects that have been thought of is the One World, One Sun initiative from the ISA and the government of India kind of, and then they also get engaged in technology transfer. So these are the broad things I thought I will put on the table, and on the background of this, of course, you have your thoughts and you can let us know. So I'll stop playing this. Talk will be by ISA, but before we get into that again, uh, uh, just I have some problem with the system. Yeah. So before we get into that, I would request all of you to please introduce yourself for 2 minutes, and then we can take on with ISA and then go on further in this discussions. So very briefly to introduce myself, my name is Ami Hussain, and I am one of the vice presidents in World Wind Energy Association, and I've been associated with wind energy for a very long time, something like more than 30 years. So I would now request Mr. Kaushik to introduce himself. And
thank you, Sami. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Amit Kaushik. I'm Chief of Unit for Program and Project Implementation Cluster at International Solar Alliance. I have more than 26 years of experience working with various ministries and echelons of the government. And before taking this assignment, I was working as Executive Director with EESL, and my portfolio was solar, rooftop solar, smart meter, electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and also the tri-generation. Thank you, Sami, for giving me this opportunity to introduce myself.
Thank you. Thank you. And now I would request Mr. Duncan Gibb to introduce himself.
Thank you very much for the opportunity and for having REN21 here at this event. REN21 is an international organization, an international nonprofit. It was originally founded in 2005 as an outcome of the very first Global Renewables Conference in 2004 in Bonn. Every year, REN21 produces the Renewables Global Status Report, which has been a flagship report on renewable energy since the first edition in 2005. Our members include international organizations such as IRENA and IEA, governments. Austria just joined REN21 as a member. We have other nonprofits as our members, industry associations such as IHA, who you already mentioned, and IGA. And we also work with research and academia. And we work closely with organizations like ISA and like the REN Alliance to achieve our objective of getting the world to switch to renewables as soon as possible. So it's our pleasure to be here today.
Thank you, Duncan. And Honorable Peter Ray, who is the president of World Wind Energy Association. Peter, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Well, yes, I've been involved in energy issues and particularly renewable energy issues for nearly 40 years.
Your video is off. Is it off? Can you switch it?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
I'm sorry. Can you both hear and see? Okay. Yes, well, thank you. I've been involved with energy issues for nearly 40 years, and I have been the minister involved with that area. I've been the chairman of Australia's largest renewable energy generator for 11 years. I've been associated with it for a further period. I've been involved with international organisations since the late 1990s, and I have been the chairman of the REN Alliance. I've been the president of the World Wind Energy Association now for 6 years, and I've attended conferences around the world to the stage where I can almost fly by myself. It's a lot of travel, and this is the first time that I've been able to attend a conference and not have to fly anywhere. And flying from Australia is something that is always just that much further to go than from almost anywhere else in the world. So I've enjoyed the aspect of being able to sit at home and participate in a world conference. And let's get on with it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, Amit, do you have a presentation or something?
I don't have.
Who are you addressing?
Mr. Kaushik.
Thank you.
Yeah, Zemi, I don't have any presentation.
Okay, okay. So then maybe you can tell us a little about ISA and some other associations or organizations that you have worked with around, international initiatives, mainly about the international cross-border transnational initiatives.
Yeah, thank you, Zemi. So I would rather focus my conversation. What I'm going to speak is on to International Solar Alliance. How does it function, and what is the objective, and how does it operate? So thanks for giving me this opportunity to participate in this session. Very important, as I see the title itself, the powering the world with wind and sun. Very crucial and very important at this very juncture. Humanity is on the crossroads. On one side, we hear code red for humanity. On other end, we have countries declaring NDCs and talking about net zero by various years, 2030, 2050, 2070, 2060, something like that. So this actually creates a lot of confusion also at times. While we talk about cutting down fossil fuels, net zeros, code red, we also have 800 million people on this earth without access to electricity. That is some number, and business as usual, as I'm given to understand, this number would touch almost 1 billion with people without access to electricity by 2030. So then that needs some balancing act, that needs some type of collaborations and partnerships between countries, between organizations, between stakeholders who are operating in the field of energy. Thus, these collaborations and international collaborations becomes very, very important. International Solar Alliance is such an initiative by Government of India. The Prime Minister Modi has declared, France came along. So this is host nation, host country is India, and France is the co-host of International Solar Alliance, launched in 2015. This organization, as we speak, has 101 member countries who have signed the framework agreement. USA being the latest entrant into this alliance. So International Solar Alliance focuses exclusively on scaling up of solar applications in member countries. So it is intergovernmental, treaty-based international organization. One of the largest in the sense of number of countries, the member focusing on the solar application. While we talk about the energy needs, there are three aspects which comes to my mind. The first is the energy excess. As I just mentioned, close to 800 million people do not have energy access. Then comes the energy security, and then the energy transition. These all three aspects are very important, and that is where ISA try and operate through its programs to have these three objectives met. For energy access, if we talk about probably the solar home lighting system kind of solutions and solar applications for agriculture, like solar water pumping, for even drinking water, and solar heating and cooling for agriculture purposes, dryers. When we talk about energy security, in some of the areas, we might have energy or electricity, but it is not reliable. So probably some of the areas where grid has not reached, we talk about solar mini grids. And then finally, the energy transition, where you replace existing diesel-fired DG sets with grid-connected solar PV projects. So International Solar Alliance is working towards achieving all these objectives under various programs. We have almost 9 programs as we speak. So how does International Solar Alliance cooperate and collaborate with the member countries? We interact, understand the need of the country. We would appreciate that the need of every country and region is different. While we talk about the Africa region, where access and availability of grid is a big issue, we cannot talk about much on large scale solar park.
Amit, may I interrupt you just for a minute? The thought came to me that since there have been many such initiatives, for example, there is REN Alliance, there is REN 21, and we have people from these organizations here, and other so many initiatives, IRENA, you know. So IRENA also does similar activities. So in the given the fact that there were so many other organizations, where did you feel there was a missing a link, or where was the niche in which you felt that the International Solar Alliance should be set up and formed? So there must be some very uh, clear niche in which you have in mind and in which you wish to operate.
Okay, very important question. That since there are so many organizations that are already operating in the area and the space of renewable energy, and particularly also the solar, but there has not been a very exclusive organization which focuses only on solar. And this being an intergovernmental organization, International Solar Alliance, which is, as I mentioned, the treaty based. So it is at the highest political level, interventions can be ensured through this platform where countries can come together. That's the first part of it. The second part of it, International Solar Alliance is endeavoring towards the fact of not only creating the database, supplying the database to member countries, but also facilitating the implementation of the projects on ground. That is also one way which International Solar Alliance works. Like, for example, right now we have been talking to many countries in Africa, Togo, Mali, Malawi, and in Latin America, like Paraguay, Cuba. So Paraguay has asked International Solar Alliance to help them out for facilitation of execution of 500 megawatt solar power PV solar plants. So NTPC is the project management consultant. Now ISA takes NTPC to Paraguay, and then NTPC provides all the technical assistance to Paraguay to develop the pre-feasibility reports, to develop the detailed project report and the best practices, because you are very well aware that India in last 10 years, from 2011 till 2021, has made lot of progress and learned lot of lessons into the solar deployment area. These best practices, not only from India, but also from the technological perspective. So NTPC provides all the best practices, all assistance to the country for execution of these projects on ground. Also, ISA is working on the blended finance risk mitigation facility. Many of the nations do not have access to this kind of finance. So ISA is working on this facility. The third is, if you would appreciate that almost 65% of the grid of the solar energy is going to be from the grid connected, and almost 90% plus investment and technology is coming from the private sector. So most of the areas where the solar deployment is there, it is not through the government or the public money. It is from the private capital and the private technology know-how. ISA is also working in partnership with many organizations in this area, corporate partners, and also working towards a private sector engagement strategy. So ISA can take those industry leaders to the countries who need them, so that they can take the technology and also financing to those countries and facilitate and accelerate the deployment of the solar. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So I have some more questions, but maybe we can request Mr. Duncan to talk about REN Alliance. And I have seen the, about the REN 21, and I have seen the REN 21 reports. They appear very exhaustive. So it must be quite a task to get all that data and analyze it. And how big is your team which does it? And is it the only thing that REN 21 does is one report in a year? So what all you do? Can you
Oh, no.
explain that? Yeah, yeah.
Oh, no. Thank you again. So it is a very exhaustive process. The reports themselves are quite quite an extensive exercise. It takes 10 months to do the GSR only. But a really important thing to understand about REN 21 is that we are not doing this alone in the REN 21 Secretariat. We have a team of contractors that we work with year in and year out who help us analyze the data, who help us write the chapters and produce this global story of renewable energy. In addition, we've received data not only from our own Google searches or our own contacts and emails, but also from our community. And so every report cycle, we do questionnaires, we have peer reviews, we have phone interviews, and we're collecting data from all of these different members, these different types of members that I mentioned earlier. So our approach is completely multi-stakeholder. It's a completely, let's say, crowdsourced, community-led exercise. We don't see ourselves as a think tank or the masters of the information where we're blessing the world with the global status report every year. Rather, we see it as a global effort to document what's happened in renewable energy in the past year, the past decade. And then in our communications, we aim to highlight what are the next challenges ahead. That's not our only activity, and we are involved in many different things I could mention. I have some slides prepared. If that's of interest, I can share them. Otherwise, I can simply talk through a few other things we do.
You can share the slides, yeah.
Great. Give me 1 second to figure this out. Put the presentation on.
You should be given the right to.
Yeah, just 1 moment, please. I just need to press the share button. I don't use WebEx very much. I think you should.
At the bottom, there is a share link. Yeah.
Do you see them now? Do you see the main slide now?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. So here's our title slide. And I mentioned this already, that we're made up of 5 different types of member. So, I mean, highlighting a few, we have a few members that just recently joined, including Austria. On the country level side, we're continually working with more NGOs and intergovernmental organizations around the world. One thing we have Terry as well as a member. One thing to understand here is, although our approach in the past was really focused around the power sector, we're continuing to add more and more members from heat, ones that are working on transport. So you can see in bold under industry associations is Euro Heat and Power. So they're working in district energy, and we're working quite closely with AEE Intech that works on the heating and cooling sector for research. So this is kind of our wide member base, and these members come from all different types of organization. And what we try to do with them is collect data and create the narrative to encourage a shift to renewable energy. So we have these members, which are around 80 to 90 different organizations or governments. In addition to that, we have more than 2,000 community members who contribute data, who take part in our events, who are reviewing the report, who are providing input to what they think we should be working on, whether it's a topic or whether it's a different location, it depends. So this is the kind of diverse community we have. In terms of our activities, we see this sort of as a 3-ring type of approach. We work on knowledge. This is the original kind of foundation of our work. So talking about the global status report in particular. But then in addition to that, we take this knowledge and we work on communicating it through hosting different events dialogues and debates, such as the REN21 Academy or the International Renewable Energy Conference that takes place typically every 2 years. The last one was in South Korea in 2019, and there will be one in Spain in 2022. And then we have our community, which helps connect this knowledge to the communication, dialogues, and debates. All of this with the objective to influence how people are thinking about the energy sector, how people think about renewable energy, and to get the right policies into place. So feel free to jump in with any questions or remarks at any point. I will just keep kind of walking through a little bit what we're working on. This is the global status report. I won't go into too much into the details here, but our data from this report, because I understand that's not the objective of this session, but beyond the global status report, we also have produced 2 reports on renewables in cities. So looking at the urban developments of renewable energy and how subnational actors are encouraging the use of renewables, how they're implementing them, how they're engaging with them with policies, and the different types of actor industries that are getting involved there is a very important subject for us. And then in addition to the power sector, as I mentioned, we are looking at the transport sector and the heating and cooling sector. We just released 2 weeks ago during COP a policy brief on transport policies for public transport and how renewable energy can help improve public transport access. So not only in terms, we think of energy not only in terms of the classical sense of energy access, like getting electricity to people, as mentioned by my colleague earlier, but also the access to transport in general in public spaces, things like last mile connectivity and such. So this is our knowledge base, and me being as part of the research direction team, this is what we are working on. But then we also have our dialogue and debates, as I mentioned. So 2 main events for us are the International Renewable Energy Conference. The very first edition of this conference was in 2004 in Bonn, as I mentioned, and since then they've been held roughly every 2 years in partnership with the national government of the host country. And for the first time in Seoul in 2019, this was hosted in collaboration not only with the Korean government, but also with the government of the city of Seoul. So this kind of reflects our approach of getting more subnational actors involved, not only in contributing data, but also in owning these processes. And that, as we see, is key to increasing the uptake of renewable energy in their context. And then the REN21 Academy is more of a community-led event where we're trying to brainstorm and think creatively on the big challenges facing the renewable energy transition. The idea being that we end up creating covering the type of data that people will want to see in the future that will help facilitate this transition. So continuing onwards, we've recently partnered with the Stakeholder Company, which is an artificial intelligence company based in Singapore. And we're working with them to develop the Renewables Influence Mapping tool. So what this basically does is look at who's active in the renewable energy sector. You can see these are our 5 member groups here, identifies the key players in these and sees who they're connected with, and ultimately makes a map that shows who are the main influencers, not in the sort of social media types of the way we speak of influencers nowadays, but more in the who's actually changing minds in the sector, whether they're sort of a thought leader or a head of an organization that plays a key role in convincing governments to phase out fossil fuels, for example. So this tool is built on publicly available information, but we have the ability to manually input information that's only accessible to our community. So we began piloting this at the beginning of 2021, and we're still fine-tuning parts of it. So getting feedback on key terms and stuff like that to make sure the tool meets our needs. But once the pilot phase is complete, will be presented broadly to the REN21 members and the community. And it'll help. Our intention is that this helps the global community better understand what is the overall map of the renewable energy world. So also looking,
yeah.
please go ahead.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. So in addition to this, I mean, I'm going back into the knowledge a little bit, but we're looking at the future of transport. So this is an ongoing project that will be released in 2022 on the third edition of the Renewables Global Futures Report. So the question that this asks is what the role of renewables will be in decarbonizing the transport sector. This is a way that we think of transport as not only let's get as much electric mobility as possible into the public as possible, but also how do we make sure that this electric mobility is powered by renewable energy? So what kind of policies exist that encourage both the use of electric mobility, but also making sure that the electric mobility is powered by renewables? So this is the focus of this next edition of this report. I already mentioned the city's report a little bit and the policy brief that was just launched, but these help explain a little bit the direction, the new directions that we're heading in terms of knowledge. So it's not just about engaging with national governments. It's really about getting local actors involved. That's the local governments. So I believe I can freely say that South Australia is expected to join REN 21 as a member. So we're getting more subnational governments as members of REN 21. And this is really the direction that we're heading in. So this is really that was the overall of what we're working on. I can go a little bit more into a presentation around our results and what happened in 2020 and what the energy sort of landscape looks like based on our reporting. But I'll leave that up to you to decide, Jamie, about the direction of the session. Or I'm happy to answer any questions as well. I think you're on mute. I believe you're muted.
You're muted, Jamie.
Jamie.
Yeah. So thank you, Duncan. Thank you very much. And we will stop here. And
Sure.
we will go back if we have time to go deeper into your presentation, and
Sure.
so
Thank
that we also have some other discussion and other stakeholders. So first of all, I would request the panelists if they have any questions for Duncan. Any questions? Okay. So I have some questions, Duncan. One is that how do you ensure the authenticity of information that you process and then you present to us? And many of us use that information. We use your reports, we use your data, and it is generally very well brought out. But how authentic and how correct it is, what is the process by which you ensure that this is, sort of revalidated data and then nothing wrong with it?
Yeah, of course. So our data approach, we have two different categories of data, and one of them is consolidated data. So this is data from organizations like IEA, like IRENA, and also from national governments. This data we largely trust, of course, working with these partners. These are our members. These are statisticians and people who've been working on this data for a long time and have large teams that are creating methodologies to make assumptions to fill in the gaps in the data where they can't collect it directly. This is data that we trust ourselves. What we do with this data, how we manipulate it and make our different calculations that help conclude the share of renewable energy, for example. We use a team of advisors that ensure that our own statistical methods are accurate and well developed. So some of these are former statisticians from national governments. Others are long-standing industry professionals, and they review the work that we're doing and ensure that this is up to the latest calculation standard. So for consolidated data, that's generally our process. That a lot of this consolidated data forms the bulk of the database, and where we pepper in different examples is by consolidating data by using data from the community, and in some cases this helps ensure complete data comprehensiveness. And what we do to to ensure that this data is accurate is, first of all, we ask any contributors for original data sources. And typically they will submit things in our questionnaire that you could submit a number. This number is actually backed up by an organization or by a government that has produced this number. So we always track that down as far as we can to see how valid the source is. When the number doesn't come from a valid source, then we look at how it compares within our own data landscape, the level of coherence that it has with other data that we have on a similar in a similar field, and ask ourselves whether this point is accurate or not. The data that we can't really validate to a valid trusted source is rare. A lot of times it's community members who are saying, well, I've heard about this project, this new PV project that was installed in Tajikistan, and for whatever reason, this wouldn't be on our radar, but clearly we can track that back to a project developer. So we make sure that our data is valid, but why this process exists for the crowdsourcing of the data is not because it's hard to validate the data, but just because it's difficult to catch such a wide net with a few people. So it's more about seeing what examples actually exist out there, and then finding that there is a good source behind it, rather than being really skeptical of each data point.
Okay, thank you. So I assume that at the moment there are no more questions. I have some questions, but then this discussion will go on. And I also have some questions for Mr. Amit Kaushik. And but before that, I would request Honorable Peter Ray to give us an overview of REN Alliance and what are its objectives and what does it achieve and how does it achieve.
Well, thank you very much, Jerry, and thank you to those who've already spoken, and in particular in relation to the REN Alliance and the REN 21 organisations. I'll be speaking a little further about both. The REN Alliance story is really, since about 2000, a story of the development of renewable energy as a major part of the world's future energy. It was formed at the conclusion of the now famous 2004 Bonn Conference on Renewable Energies. This was confirmed, I think, by subsequent events as being the first major world conference to take seriously the need to develop renewable energy for world sustainability, including in relation to climate change and reversing that. I emphasise this order, renewable energy, as part of sustainability, because in the earlier times to which I refer, sustainability was at the forefront of many of the meetings and discussions that were taking place. The Bonn Conference followed the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1992, the Millennium Declaration and the Millennium Development Goals in the year 2000, the World Summit on Sustainable Development in 2002. And it was out of those meetings, particularly the last mentioned, that the WEHAB title for the needs for a sustainable world was developed. And the sustainability guidelines were water, energy, health, agriculture, and biodiversity. I think it's important to remember those because while it's one of them, energy is only one. It's not the sole means of obtaining sustainability for the world. The annual conferences of the parties, that is the COPs, had been dragging along painfully slowly, achieving some progress, but with little attention being paid to renewable energy and the role which it could play. And I found a number of them to be almost unbearably boring in the early days of pre-Bonn Conference. I think the Bonn Conference had a wonderful effect on people paying attention to renewable energy, and through that to a number of the issues about sustainability, whereas the earlier COPs tended to devote a lot of time to talking about single issues in relation to sustainability in the developing world. The Bonn Conference provided, I believe, a milestone in the history of the world, not just in the history of climate change, the history of sustainability, but in the history of the world. And it was 154 nations which came together to consider the issues relating to the role of renewable energy in achieving sustainability and how it should be developed. From that conference came both the recognition of the need and the urgency in developing renewable energy. The graphs of renewable energy growth from 2004 attest to the success of the conference in the deployment of renewable energy generation and the rate at which that took place. The world started to take serious steps down the road to the replacement of fossil fuels with renewable energy, but also the provision of access to electricity for those living away from the grid distribution systems of the fossil fuel power stations. The conference also established the way forward for the structures needed to develop renewable energy for the world. And so let's have a look at those. And one of the first, in fact, I'd claim the very first, was the Renewable. The three most developed forms of renewable energy generation were at that time solar, wind, and hydro. I was one of the board of both the Wind Energy Association and the International Hydropower Association, and I knew well the solar people who were involved in the International Solar Energy Society. And at the conclusion of the Bonn Conference, and in the meeting rooms of that conference, we called together, I invited the leaders of those organisations to have a meeting, and Surfing Gasanga, who's one of the people organising this conference, was present, as were a number of others who are not with us at the moment. We talked about the need to work together to encourage the world to think in terms of renewable energy, not a single method of generation, to develop plans for the means to have the governments of the world recognise that to make renewable energy develop rapidly, there was a need to facilitate its growth to replace the pollution-creating fossil fuel generators. To establish that renewables working together would succeed far sooner than would be the case if we had them continuing with an approach of mine's better than yours. And that was one of the problems which existed in relation to the credibility of renewable energy when the fossil fuel people were able to say, if you can't agree amongst yourself, then what credibility have you got? And that was the sort of criticism that was still being made continuously at that time. We really went ahead with identifying that the renewable energy technologies are differing from different locations. And that's something which I think we all recognise now, but at that time there was a tendency to talk as if you could have one renewable energy technology which would serve all needs, all places. And of course, we all know now that's not so. Many locations will require a combination of technologies, and this was another point we discussed at that meeting. The representatives at the meeting agreed that we should form the Renewable, and on that day, the 4th of June 2004, the Renewable, which I believe has made a significant difference to the rate at which renewable energy has been able to develop, that was formed. United, we set out to assist in establishing the bodies foreshadowed in the International action program which was set out in the political declaration, which came from the Bonn conference. And it's fascinating reading to go back to the conference report, which came from Bonn, and to see the things that was recommended there in relation to the establishment of bodies to fulfill the ambitions outlined in the political declaration. So let's look at some of the recommendations from the Bonn political declaration. And the first I want to talk to is the Renewable Energy Network for the 21st century, which was a major recommendation as being needed to ensure that the world could understand from reliable information what was happening, what were the plans for the future, what were the facts of the present, and the history of the past. And this was followed almost immediately from the Bonn conference by a committee being established to implement the call for a global policy network. And while we've heard something of the current work of RED 21, I'd like to talk about its early days. And I think it was one of the important, in fact, probably the single most important thing which followed from the Bonn conference. And I was a member of the committee which prepared the draft for the introduction of what has become REN 21. And in fact, I well remember the discussion as to whether the title REN 21 would be adopted or not. There were various other suggestions, but that committee met on a number of occasions, and then it was in June 2005 that the REN 21 organisation was announced, and it was in Copenhagen in June 2005 that REN 21 really came into existence. And I regard it as important when talking about the REN Alliance that I was a member of the committee representing the WWEA and its co-members of the REN Alliance. Through the REN Alliance, the IHA and ICES had a voice in the establishment of REN 21. There was some resistance to the International Hydropower Association being admitted to REN 21 while it represented large hydro. But eventually the role of hydro, large and small, was recognised as an important part, although there are still some distinctions quoted for the differences between the activity development of small hydro and large hydro. We went forward from there to the production of statistics, policies and ideas as a means of promoting renewable energy. And the REN 21 had a significant role in work which was carried out at that time. We've developed, but we've still got a long way to go. The REN Alliance was later made one of the more complete by the joining with the International Geothermal Association. And that followed a meeting which I had in the United States with the then president of the association at Klamath Falls. And I did mention earlier that it was the first time I'd seen geothermal activity to warm a road so that the road didn't ice over. And that was an interesting experience at that time. The IGA then joined with the other three to become the foursome, and that then led to us assisting the bioenergy organisation to be formed as the World Bioenergy Association. That was formed in Stockholm in 2008, and so made the alliance of the 5 major renewable energy associations into a combined voice for renewable energy development. It's participated in a united way at the COPs at REN21 steering committee. On that committee, I was a member of the bureau for 5 years.
Peter, if you understand then, the REN Alliance is different from REN21. The two are different organizations, and Alliance is more of an alliance between, solar, wind, biomass, hydro, and then, of course, REN21 we understand is more of a knowledge network. So is that right kind of understanding? Because I think your
Yes.
genesis is same together. Yeah.
I'm sorry if I've confused. Let me clarify. I'm talking about the role of the REN Alliance in what happened in the period from how it came to be established and then its period up to today. And one of the things in which it was involved was the creation of REN21, which is an entirely separate body, but of which the REN Alliance has been represented particularly in its formation and in its operation following that. So that's the REN21 is, as has been described, a marvellous organisation producing information which is, I've not heard it being challenged successfully. It has done a tremendous job in being able to draw together using the methods which have been described to us to produce, and I just hold it that way to show the size of the document, which is the present global status report. And it started off with this one, which is the Global Status Report 2005. And you can see the difference in the in the size of them. But I thought we did very well to be able to produce a global status report in 2005, following the Bonn conference in 2004 and the establishment of the REN21 in June 2005.
Two very important things that come out of your discussion and that presentation by Duncan is that on one hand we have a knowledge network which is highly focused, and information is crucial, and correct information is more crucial in today's world to get the things and get the decisions correctly. So there can be nothing more important than having the right kind of information and correct information processed and analyzed. So this is what REN21 is achieving today. And the REN Alliance is a network of all your different bodies which is spread out all across the globe. And these networks then function in a manner that helps carry forward the energy transition. Is that understanding right from my side?
Yes, and as an example, I mentioned when we were opening this conference that the WWEA has over 600 members, many of which are organisations, associations in various countries of the world. We have over 100 countries represented. So it represents a large part of the activity in wind around the world. It also represents the activities in the other 4 technologies. And yes, it is tremendously important that that association, the REN Alliance, continues to play a united role in pushing the understanding and the development of the industry of renewable energy, and that it speaks with one voice and does not create confusion on the part of the public who try to understand, but with a limited access, what is going on in relation to something which is causing so much discussion. So let me just continue with the development of the role which the REN Alliance played following the creation at the conclusion of the Bonn conference in 2004. And we have been united in presenting at the COPs, the REN 21 Steering Committee, the formation and operation of IRENA, the holding of the International Renewable Energy Conferences, which I mentioned REN 21 has been the organising body, the gatekeeper as it was told, following the first World Conference, which was organised through the United Nations. And then from then on, REN 21 has been the one to provide the nod for the place to hold the major world conferences, and which have been held on a number of occasions, including in Delhi in, I think it was 2010. The REN Alliance has been and clearly should remain a united voice. It was so during the development of IRENA. We campaigned from 2004 onwards for the development of an international intergovernment body which could promote the understanding and the way of operating the renewable energy development which had been foreseen and called for at the Bonn conference. And
so, Peter,
we participated.
Just a question. Peter, just a question. You talked about IRENA, and maybe this is also a question for other panelists, that you mentioned that you have sort of, the REN Alliance sort of lobbied for the formation of IRENA.
More than lobbied.
More than lobbied, to bring it to the formation and fructification. Now, do you think the purpose for which you had in mind that IRENA should be set up, has it achieved that purpose? Has it been that successful in whatever you people had in mind at that time? Will you throw some light on that?
Certainly, yes. What we did was to participate in various meetings which were held for the, as well as lobbying for it, for the development of the case for, and then the actual institution which was created of the IRENA. We attended the major conferences which were held to formalise its establishment, and even played a part in the development of its first year of work program, which I will recall. There were the objective was to be able to have the governments of the nations of the world brought together into an organisation which would represent government of countries which were parts of the United Nations, were members of the United Nations. And that has been successful to a very significant degree, in that more than 160 nations are now members of IRENA, and IRENA has successfully operated to provide to and from government a means of promoting the growth of renewable energy in consultation between governments of nations, whereas before it had been representatives of civil society, it had been representatives of governments, it had been representatives of a variety of institutions which had played a part in both the COPs and in the other conferences. And so with the REN Alliance, again, providing a united voice, we were delighted when eventually the International Renewable Energy Agency was formed. I won't pause to tell the story of how it came to be headquartered in Abu Dhabi with a technical office in Bonn, but that's another story for another time.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Peter.
That I would like to conclude with
Please.
a little further mention of the development path in which the Ren Alliance was involved, included many other campaigns to develop the various organisations which have now become familiar around the world. It's been a project in which we have participated as a voice combined, telling the story of how the world can be changed, the world problem of the climate change can be reversed, how we can play a major role in what the future world will be when we speak with one voice on a credible and well prepared case for action to be taken, which will assist the development of renewable energy to the stage where we can have a 100% renewable energy world. And that is the role which has been played by the Ren Alliance. I believe, I'm personally very proud of that role, and I believe that it has made a very important part in changing the world from where it was at the beginning of this century to where it is now.
Thank you very much, Peter. And yeah, I mean, your ideas and your explanation of Ren Alliance is very interesting and gives us a lot of insights. Does anyone have a question? Anyone in the audience or have a question?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Several, but I'll try to focus on one because I've been at Ren 21 for 3 years, but I've been familiar with it for 5. So it's always really fascinating to hear about the history and the work that the Ren Alliance has done. I just wanted to ask you, Peter, one question. I mean, it's more of a topical question than one on the international organizations we're talking about, but it's about sustainability. And you mentioned the sustainability guidelines earlier that were originally drafted, and we're all familiar with the traditional arguments against and for hydropower and bioenergy in terms of sustainability, but now solar and wind are increasingly coming into the focus concerning rare earth materials, concerning biodiversity impacts. And I'm wondering how you see the challenges regarding the sustainability of renewables, if they're public perception, and what might your recommendations be for dealing with this subject?
Well, the IHA has developed a new program for the way in which it will present itself and the case for renewable energy to all interested parties, and so far as possible to gain the interest of others. The detail of that is something which I prefer not to try to outline. It's their own program, which we will be, through the Ren Alliance, supporting. We've had it put to us by the IHA, and the IHA needs to continue the role which we played in 21 years ago, when the World Commission on Dams came out with a report which was very condemnatory of the role of hydro development at that time. And in places around the world, that judgment was justified. And so we in the IHA of that day spent a considerable amount of time working on how we could, what we should do and how we should go about making the development of hydropower something which was acceptable to the community. And after work was done on the Dams and Development Project, which was organised through the United Nations, the Dams and Development Committee came up with recommendations. We actually, the company which I was chairman, Hydro Tasmania, had gone through a period of moving from an old approach to hydro development to a new approach in which we put sustainability and the environment at the forefront. And we, on behalf of the IHA and with the assistance of Hydro-Quebec, developed the sustainability guidelines and the protocol to judge that development. And we have reached the stage where, for funding for new hydro development programs, we were able to get the various funding authorities to accept that it would be a requirement of the provision of funds that the sustainability guidelines and protocol be adhered to by the developer. These are some of the things that happened in that period at the beginning of this century, and I believe that what work is now being developed by the IHA will further enhance its credibility. But can I just go back and tell you, nobody could be more sensitive to this than I am. In the mid-1980s, there was a campaign in Tasmania against the development of on a river called the Franklin River. And that created worldwide interest in what was the case for renewable energy through hydro. When I became chairman of Hydro Tasmania in 1993, I set out to change that, to totally reverse it. And we did. And by 2001, we won the Blue Planet Prize for the best scheme in the world, hydro scheme in the world, taking into account the engineering, the financial, the social, and the environmental considerations. And that's the sort of change which then we were able to quote and show as the change which followed, was implemented following the World Commission on Dams report. But we changed from being the pariah dog to being a world prize leader, and that's something. Yeah. That's something that I'll always be proud to be able to say it is possible, and we did it.
Good. So now I will move on to Mr. Amit Kaushik. Amit, you are there? Yeah. So yeah, so we had some discussion with you, and I think of these many networks which are there, different alliances and things. The interesting part about the International Solar Alliance is that it emanates as one of the networks from India and France, and is also, as far as I can make out, is looking at many developing areas of the world like Africa, South America, this is what I make out for that you. So can you delve a little more on your programs, how you are doing it internationally? You mentioned last time that the NTPC could do projects, but if you could dwell more about the programmatic approach and how you are going about it.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, right. So, Jamie, thanks for giving me floor once all over again. And as far as the programs are concerned, there are 9 programs which ISA is running. The first program is scaling of solar application for agriculture use. For this, in Africa region, out of 22 countries, we have asked that we shall do the demand aggregation and carry out a price discovery for the member countries. Because if we scale it up, the prices are bound to come down. So 22 countries in Africa region, The demand created was 272,529 solar water pumps of various capacities. International Solar Alliance carried out a price discovery tender. It was an international competitive bidding. And you would be happy to hear that the prices came down almost to the tune of 47% from the existing market prices. So because of the demand, the kind of demand was generated, right? That is one aspect of it, that how do we take the programs ahead. Now, again, coming to the solar water pumping, we also collaborate with other partner organizations like with UNDP and IBSA Fund and ISA, three organizations joined hand together. IBSA has given $2 million for some of the demonstration projects in 10 African countries. UNDP is the implementing agency.
What is the full form of IPSA?
That India, Brazil, South Africa.
Okay.
So that is where this in 10 countries we have already. So ISA facilitate this discussion with the national focal points of the member countries, and we take it to that level, maintain all this progresses. UNDP through their country offices will facilitate procurement and deployment of these pumps. So that is another way of taking these pumps on ground. The third thing is with GGI and ISA, we are working out on creating a trust fund which is looking at 1 million solar water pumping solutions in 13 countries, including Asia Pacific and Africa region. So that's another way of taking programs.
So this trust fund, where will it come from? The fund will come from where?
Yeah, that is what the modalities are being worked out. So GGI and ISA has joined hands together to see that if we can have 13 countries and have 1 million pump across, the potential has been assessed, and the work is on for creation of this trust fund, and modalities are being worked out, as just mentioned. So this is one aspect of it. Now we have another program like Solar Park. Solar Park is one program where it is a grid connected thing. So when we talk about Solar Park, in a traditional manner, it should have been a 5,000 megawatt with various parts and all. But to reach to that large scale, it is still there. So we call it Solar Park, but then it's a solar project. In Togo, it is almost 285 megawatt. Government of Togo has asked ISA to facilitate. 35 megawatt is at a site, which is the DPR has been prepared, PPA has been approved. We are almost at the tender stage. So ISA does not do any tender. It's a project management consultant which ISA provides to the member country, carries out all these activities on behalf of the country. That's another way of it.
It's like a professional support to many countries.
Absolutely. To take this feasibility, because countries preparing PPAs, government support agreements, concession agreements, so many of
now, so I have one question which comes back from what you were saying, that probably NTPC can play a role, but NTPC is just one of the companies, and it's another matter that it's a Government of India company, but still it's a company. And in the private sector, there are many other players who can do similar work. So don't you think it's a good idea to sort of have some sort of a competitive approach, not necessarily, I won't say a competitive bidding, but a competitive approach to empanel such parties which can implement projects in different countries?
Okay, very good question, Jamie, again. And if you refer to my earlier discussion, which I had, say, a few minutes back, I mentioned very categorically that ISA is working towards private sector engagement strategy, because 90% of the investment and technological thing comes from the private sector. So in this particular approach, NTPC was selected through a Swiss challenge method, and it was approved in the assembly that whichever member country wants to take help of NTPC, they can take help of NTPC as project management consultant. NTPC is not executing project on ground. Probably NTPC will do the tender, bid out, and the private sector player will participate in that and will execute and implement on ground. And countries are free to choose their own project management consultant, which, if they wish, ISA will facilitate that also to happen in the country. So this is the entirety, the choice of the country, that which way they would like to go.
Yeah. But only thing with NTPC is that it's a developer. That probably you could have gone with Rights. Rights is a more of a EPC company or consulting kind of thing, or some such there are Projects India Limited, PIL, and all these things. Anyway, that question, of course, you people can manage in the manner best possible. But the other question I have is that Solar Alliance, it says that it works for solar, and it almost appears that you work for solar photovoltaics, which is just a technology. So what about other solar, if you look at solar is not just solar photovoltaics, it's also solar thermal. It is also, in fact, the wind energy is also a part of the solar energy which comes on Earth. And in many ways, hydro is also like a solar. So how do you define solar, and how do you, of course, move forward on that? Because photovoltaic is just a technology, and there could be other technologies which compete with it. So would you like to say something on that?
Yeah, sure. So wind is a type of renewable. Hydro is type of a renewable. Solar photovoltaic is a type of a renewable. Nuclear is an alternative energy. It's not a renewable energy, of course. So these three types of technologies using the nature resources like wind, hydro, and solar, probably they can complement each other, and a hybrid system is also a beneficial part of it, right? So while talking about hydro, there is something called floating solar, which you are very well aware of that. And we are working with many countries on floating solar now. Suriname has requested International Solar Alliance to assist for setting up of 100 megawatt floating solar. Now, what happens with this floating solar? So this is a hydro and solar combination. Many reservoirs, if you set up a floating solar, very quickly, I'll just say it has three major benefits. No land required, no land acquisition issues. Second, no additional grid infrastructure, because when you are not using hydro, the solar can complement. You don't have to invest extra on the grid infrastructure, and many of the places grid infrastructure does not exist throughout the country. And third is when during summertime or the availability of water, or during the drought they want to save water, solar can still continue to generate electricity. So solar photovoltaic is complementing the hydro here. Same way, wind along with solar, the hybridization can work and complement each other. Of course, the next level comes is the accumulation or the storage technology, which pump storage and battery storage, they're a separate thing altogether. But these all things have to come together and complement each other for a better output and a better result.
Yeah. So that's what I was trying to get at, that all these different technologies there. And so from the other people, any question? Peter, you
Before
have
I take any question, Jamie, with your permission, I would like to compliment Peter Ray for at least educating me with the kind of background information you have provided. Many thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to just add a couple of things, if I may. One is a correction. I do apologise to Monica Oliphant, who was I think, Vice President of the International Solar Energy Society at the time of the formation of the REN Alliance, and she was present, and she's also been involved in this conference. So she is somebody who was in at the beginning and is still participating. I also just would like to conclude with a short summary of the REN Alliance future, the importance of the 5 technologies talking together as we move into the new development of various other technologies, with hydro and pump storage and backup for wind, and the various forms of batteries and the various forms of use of hydrogen. We've got the type of developments which have taken place for the remote area power supplies, all of these things which are developing quite rapidly in most cases, that new technology requires that there still be a single voice which represents the renewable energy industry and the considerations of that as against other forms of power generation, energy generation. So I'd like to conclude with what I referred to in an earlier session, which is we need to continue to play the symphony of renewables. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And Amit Kaushik, you would like to also have a few last words, and I think we're approaching the end of the time for this session. Then we can move on.
Yep, thanks, Jamie. And last words are many thanks for inviting me. It was an educating session for me. Looking forward to have another round of discussion with Duncan, Peter, and Jamie in near future.
Thank you. Thank you very much appreciated. And we definitely benefited from your thoughts on International Solar Alliance. And Duncan, would you like to have a last word, last few lines?
Yeah, it's like I mentioned already, it's fascinating to hear about the history of renewables working together, and to hear what ISA is doing, the great work there. I think where we saw in the past that renewables needed to work together to achieve the energy transition, I think let's say the 2021, 2022 REN 21 approach is that all of society needs to work together. That's not only about the supply side technologies anymore. We need to talk to those who are using the energy in buildings and in transport, talk to all different levels of government. And that's the type of collaboration that we see as holding the cards for the transition to fully achieve its potential. So that's what we're going to keep working on. And thanks again for having us here, having me here, even though it was supposed to be Rana. I was pleased to step in. And yeah, we hope to be back someday soon.
So thank you very much.
Can I say to both of our others, thank you very much for your participation in this conference and in this session. And thank you, Jamie, for your moderating the session. And can I say, I also hope that you enjoy the final day tomorrow and participate by listening to some of the sessions then. So thank you, Jamie. Back to you to conclude the session.
Yeah, thank you very much. And in this session, of course, we were looking at the transnational and international initiatives. And of course, we don't have all the such bodies which are active across the world. For example, IRENA is not represented in this session, or for that matter, IEA or other agencies who also play some significant role. Not only in the assessing knowledge and packaging knowledge for stakeholders and enabling them to take decisions. But apart from that, I was trying to get to the understanding of how these networks, are playing out their role all over the globe, and they are somehow, accelerating the process of energy transition through stakeholder consultation, from knowledge processing, through networks, through all these different things which happen, and influencing decision making. And as Peter has pointed out, that they have seen, he does feel that REN Alliance has done has achieved a lot, and it has had a significant role in modifying the world which was there about 20 years back to what it is today. And in that, REN Alliance has had a role. I would say even the World Wind Energy Association, which is a network, has had a role. We had a major conference in 2004 in China, and at that time, China was not there anywhere on the sort of wind map of the world. But you see immediately after 2005 how things evolved, and like that in many other countries. So these kind of initiatives, they have helped the policymakers, and always the policymakers are looking for some thing to hold on to. It may be a piece of data, it may be an expert's voice, it may be a body's judgment or something. And when they get it, then they are able to move forward with their system in the government or the politicians or the parliament or things like that. So we have approached the end of this session. It was a very fruitful session. I think everybody enjoyed it, and it was a very unique session. It was not so much technical, but more of broader societal aspects. So I thank you all, and I look forward to meeting you and discussing these things again sometime. Thank you.
Thank you very
Very
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
Fairly well.
Bye-bye.
Fairly well, Peter. Bye.
Bye-bye.